So yes, the conflict over in Eastern Europe is getting worse. It's spiraling out of control, and it's escalating every single day. And with the recent announcement that the US is sending M1 Abrams tanks over to the conflict zone, we know we're crossing a red line that was put there by Russia, and that Russia's acknowledging that action as being direct involvement in the conflict. So prepare for this to get worse. Now, Ukraine is not the only country over there that's going to be using American-made military equipment very soon. In fact, Russia is working on acquiring American-made military equipment as well right this second. Putin is negotiating with the Taliban to acquire some of the equipment we left behind when we withdrew there that the Taliban then seized, and he's negotiating to get that equipment from them by giving them status as a recognizable nation state. So acknowledgement is what he's offering in order to get our equipment, and that should concern you because when you talk about military equipment, they can reverse engineer it, they can access things in the communication devices that might allow for espionage or who knows what else. So there's a lot of things going on right there that could be problematic, which is why what we did when we pulled out of Afghanistan was quite the mess. Now, why does this matter for preppers? Well, understand that when we talk about near-peer conflicts, we often talk about the idea of a foreign invasion. Whether or not that's likely doesn't matter. It's something that we should prepare for because I would think that people in Ukraine right now were hoping it wasn't likely either, and now look what they're dealing with. And when we talk about near-peer conflicts, we have to understand what type of technology and what access they might have when it comes to weaponry. And things like communications or night vision is stuff you should anticipate having to deal with if that ever happens, all right? So what did we leave behind in Afghanistan? Well, I can tell you it was $7.12 billion worth of equipment. So a lot of stuff was left behind in Afghanistan, but I can go through the whole list of what we actually left behind there so we can have an idea of what Russia might have access to here very soon. But really quickly, I do need to mention that the biggest supporter of the channel is Midway USA. And Midway USA actually provides some of the things on this list to people like us in case we need it for preparedness purposes. So I appreciate what Midway USA does in the sense of providing me with the support I need to do more with this channel and for allowing people like ourselves to have access to some of this equipment, all right? So what did we leave behind? Well, here's what we left behind in Afghanistan that Russia could very soon have in their possession in the near future, okay? We left behind 22,000 Humvees. 22,000. That's a lot of Humvees. So they might just be rolling around in Humvees sometime in the middle of Ukraine here very soon. Understand, 22,000 of them are still in Afghanistan. We'll see how many Russia gets, right? We also left behind 33 Black Hawk helicopters. Now, I'm sure the Taliban has crashed quite a few of those at this point in time, but if Russia gets some Black Hawks, they can use them to reverse engineer some of the technology, maybe use them to improve their own designs, or who knows what else. But either way, yes, they can come into possession of Black Hawk helicopters here in the near future. We also left behind 23 Super Tucano fighter planes, which are basically fighter planes that use a propeller, but I'm sure they still have some efficiency and some use, so those are now accessible by Russia as well. We left behind 115 Max Pro trucks, which are basically MRAPs. And MRAPs are armored vehicles that are very effective of getting people from one place to the other, and SWAT teams use them, and we know the National Guard uses them, and they're very useful. So 115 of those are in the possession of the Taliban, which means that Russia might have them soon here as well. We also left behind 634 M1117 armored vehicles, which are basically transport vehicles. So that's a lot more vehicles they could access to be able to move troops from one place to another in an armored vehicle that's likely a little more durable than some of the stuff Russia has currently, right? We also left behind 550,000 machine guns. Not 550, but 550,000. Because apparently it's fine for the Taliban to have 550,000 machine guns, but here in America, we're not really trustworthy enough to have access to that kind of equipment, right? So either way, we're talking probably M249s, probably some M60s, and then, I don't know, maybe some Browning 50 cals or whatever. But regardless, I don't have the details as to what type of machine guns were left behind, but I do know that 550,000 of them were left behind. So that's a lot of machine guns that could suddenly find themselves on the other side of Ukraine, right? We also left behind 16,000 pairs of night vision devices or night vision goggles, right? 16,000. I don't know if that's dual tube. I don't know if that's binoculars. I don't know exactly what that refers to, but I do know that it's listed as 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles, okay? So that means that the Taliban, as well as Russia, is going to have a lot more night vision capability here at any point in the future, which means it might be something you want to consider in the sense of preparedness. It's an extremely expensive endeavor. It's something that not everybody is going to have access to. It's something that I still don't have, other than something very rudimentary, but I am hoping to acquire it here at some point, because you do need to level the playing field if you ever find yourselves dealing with people from, I don't know, Russia or the Taliban, I guess. So here we are, right? We also left behind 162,000 radios. That's a lot of communication devices that we just left behind for the Taliban to mess with, and now for Russia to acquire. And I don't know how encryption or any of that kind of stuff necessarily works, but I'm sure that there are some sensitive things that those communications devices might have that we don't necessarily need everyone to have access to. So just keep that in mind, but you should also have access to communications as well, because without communications, you're going to be on your own, and that's never a good thing now, is it? Well, I've heard people say in the past that having a radio during a conflict might be more valuable than a rifle, right? So what else do we leave behind? 8,000 trucks. I don't know what kind of trucks. I don't know if they're like Toyotas. I don't know if we're talking about like LTVs, like light armored transport vehicles or something like that. But either way, 8,000 trucks were left behind, and that's a lot of trucks. I don't know. Could they be some like the big box trucks or something like that? The cargo vehicles? Not sure. All I know is it was 8,000. And we also left behind 4 C-130 transport planes. Those are like big Boeing transport planes. And I'm sure that Afghanistan doesn't have like a ton of use for them, and I don't even know if the Taliban could actually fly them, but I'm sure Russia could, and I'm sure Russia could use them. So these are things that we basically left behind for the Taliban to have that they might now sell to Russia, and that Russia might be here soon using against Ukraine. And since Ukraine is using weapons that we're giving them, and then Russia might be using weapons that we basically gave the Taliban, which they're now getting from the Taliban, well, you're going to see a lot of interesting stuff going on over there with Ukrainians and Russians all fighting each other with American weaponry. So, what does this mean for you? Well, it just means that this is getting worse. The whole thing's spiraling out of control, and that you should at least be aware of the fact that some of these people have access to things like communications, night vision. I'm not going to say machine guns is something that we can really talk about here, but what I can say is that having some type of firearm is a good idea. But regardless, these are all the things that we left behind that Russia might have their hands on now, which means this war is just not getting better. And the fact that they're even going out of their way to try to acquire this equipment should tell you that this isn't going away anytime soon. So prepare the best you can. Be ready for anything to happen, because we are at that point where anything could happen. And I wanted to run down this list with you all because, I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous how much equipment we left behind there. It's ridiculous how much equipment that's American-made, high-quality equipment Russia will suddenly be able to have their hands on. And it's also ridiculous that as civilians here in the United States, we don't have access to 95% of that equipment. Yet, you know, everybody over in Afghanistan and now Russia can just grab it no problem. But that's where we're at. So let me know if you have any questions for me. Leave comments below if there's anything you want to discuss regarding some of the equipment left behind. If you have any guesses on what type of 8,000 trucks they were that we left behind, let me know as well. And then keep in mind, you can always hit me up on magicprepper.com. And if you want to hit up my subscribe star, I've got some good stuff going on over there, exclusive content. It's $5 a month, but you can always directly message me there. You get prioritized communication. And I've got some preparedness incentives going on there too, meaning something along the lines of giveaways, right? So good stuff happening there as well. If you have anything else for me, you know what to do. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.